Imagine enjoying the sweet scent of cider at a festival, when suddenly, a mother bear and her cubs appear. What would you do if these wild visitors decided your festival was their playground? The crisp autumn air was filled with the sweet tang of apple cider, laughter, and the rhythmic clatter of wooden carts. Families wandered among rows of stalls adorned with pumpkins, hand-painted signs, and baskets of apples. Children darted between adults, sticky hands clutching caramel apples. But in the distance, past the golden orchards, a rustle in the trees caught the attention of a few observant festival-goers. From the shadows, a mother bear cautiously emerged, her thick fur glistening in the afternoon sun. Two small cubs followed closely, their tiny paws crunching leaves as they stepped onto the festival grounds. Instinct warred with curiosity, they had never seen humans or carts laden with apples. The scent of fresh cider drew them forward, each barrel and basket a tantalizing treasure. A young boy, clutching a caramel apple, froze as the mother bear's nose lifted, sniffing the sweet aroma. One cub stumbled, slipping slightly but catching itself with a paw. Gasps spread through the crowd. The humans had never seen anything like this, a mother bear and her cubs wandering so boldly into a bustling festival. The stall vendors shouted warnings, waving their arms. Some retreated behind tables, others slowly edged toward safe distances. The mother bear stepped closer to a barrel tipped slightly from the day's activity. The scent was irresistible. One cub batted at a fallen apple, sending it rolling across the cobblestones. The boy, unsure whether to flee or freeze, tilted his head in fascination. Then the unexpected happened. The mother bear rose on her hind legs, towering over the barrel, sniffing deeply. The crowd inhaled collectively, heartbeats matching the tension in the air. A sudden yelp from a cub startled everyone. It had accidentally knocked over a basket of apples, and the cascade of fruit rolled toward the humans. Children squealed in delight, thinking this was part of the festival fun. Adults, however, stepped back cautiously. The mother bear's ears flicked, her gaze darted between the cubs and the humans. She wasn't aggressive, but her protective stance was clear. At that moment, a festival volunteer, arms trembling but eyes wide with courage, took a step forward. "It's okay, we won't hurt you," she called softly. The mother bear's nose twitched at the sound of her voice. For a heartbeat, the air hung suspended, a delicate balance between curiosity and fear. Then a gust of wind carried the scent of spilled cider, strong and sweet, and the cubs squealed, tumbling after the scent. The mother bear followed, paws careful over the wooden stalls, careful not to crush anything, or anyone. The crowd's tension didn't break. Whispers ran through the festival like wildfire. Cameras snapped, phones lifted, and every person held their breath. Could these wild visitors be calmed, or would chaos erupt? Just as the mother bear reached the largest cider barrel, a sudden crash echoed from the far end of the festival. One cub froze, ears pinned back as the mother's head snapped toward the sound. Someone, was approaching. And in that moment, the festival seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the first spark of disaster. The mother bear shifted, lowering herself onto all fours, ears alert. The approaching figure was a man, festival security, moving quickly but cautiously, hands raised. He carried no weapons, only a bucket of fresh water. The crowd whispered among themselves, could he really approach a mother bear with cubs at her side? The cubs crouched behind their mother, trembling but curious. One pawed at a shiny apple, sending it rolling toward the man. The mother growled softly, not a threat but a warning. The man froze, placing the bucket on the ground and stepping back. Water splashed gently onto the cobblestones, glinting in the sunlight. The mother bear sniffed, leaning closer. Slowly she sipped, the tension easing slightly. A small girl from the crowd stepped forward, holding a piece of bread. "Here, please don't hurt them," she whispered. The mother's nose twitched. She studied the girl with keen, intelligent eyes, then glanced at the cubs. They mirrored her cautious curiosity. The crowd leaned forward silently as if the world itself had paused. Suddenly, one cub bolted toward a cider barrel, knocking it over with a crash. Apples scattered everywhere. Children squealed, laughing nervously. Adults stepped back, fearing escalation. But the mother bear sprang after her cub, guiding it gently with a paw. She nudged it away from the humans, signaling trust, though clearly wary of the bustling humans surrounding her. The man in charge raised his hand, signaling for the festival-goers to stay calm. "It's okay," he murmured. "They just want to explore. They're not dangerous if we don't scare them." The mother bear sniffed the spilled cider, her claws tapping softly on the wooden cobbles. She seemed to consider the humans for a moment, then turned back to her cubs, signaling them to follow. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew through the trees, sending a basket of apples tumbling toward the mother bear. Her eyes snapped to it. The cubs squeaked, scrambling to catch the rolling fruit. Laughter and gasps rippled through the crowd. Some humans started taking slow steps forward, offering fruit gently. Just as the tension began to ease, a festival cart tipped dangerously near the mother bear's path. One cub froze, the mother growling sharply. Would the humans react in time, or would this small moment spark chaos at the festival? The man jumped, steadying the tipping cart just in time. Apples spilled, clattering across the cobblestones. One cub darted forward, chasing a bright red apple. The mother bear followed, nudging her offspring gently. The humans, now understanding her intentions, held still. A few dared to kneel, placing small pieces of bread on the ground. The cubs sniffed, pawed, and cautiously ate. The crowd's fear began to melt into wonder. Cameras clicked, children giggled, and a collective sense of awe filled the festival. The mother bear, sensing no immediate threat, allowed the humans a cautious proximity. One boy stepped forward, holding a small mug of cider. "I think she wants this," he whispered. The mother sniffed the mug, then licked the rim gently. The boy's face lit up, and the crowd erupted in quiet applause. She nudged her cubs, who explored further, learning from her calm behavior. Trust was forming, subtle but undeniable. But just as the festival began to relax, a loud bark echoed from the edge of the trees. Dogs belonging to festival-goers had wandered too close, barking furiously. The mother bear's ears pinned back. The cubs huddled close. Panic could reignite in an instant. The mother bear rose, growling low and warning the intruding dogs. The humans froze. Would the festival descend into chaos, or would the bond between bears and humans hold strong? The autumn sun glinted on tense fur and startled faces as everything paused in uncertainty. What would you do if wild bears suddenly appeared at a busy festival? Could trust form in moments of chaos? The mother bear's low growl reverberated across the festival grounds, a warning both clear and commanding. The barking dogs froze, startled by the sudden assertion of dominance. The cubs huddled closer to their mother, trembling slightly, their tiny claws scrabbling against the cobblestones as they sought comfort. Humans instinctively held their breath, unsure whether to intervene or stay frozen in awe at the unfolding scene. The man who had been guiding the interaction earlier, festival security, stepped cautiously forward, raising a hand in a gesture of calm. "It's okay," he said softly, his voice deliberate and soothing. "They're just scared, let them be." The mother bear's ears flicked toward him, nostrils flaring as she assessed the human's intentions. She was no stranger to caution. She had learned from the forest that survival required constant vigilance. The dogs, sensing no immediate threat from the humans, slowly retreated toward their owners, tails lowered, eyes wary. The mother bear's growl softened, a subtle exhalation of tension as she signaled her cubs to follow her toward a small open space between two cider stalls. The crowd instinctively parted, forming a wide arc that allowed her to move freely. Children gasped softly, mesmerized by the fluidity of her movements and the delicate care she displayed toward her cubs. One of the cubs, more adventurous than the other, wandered toward a tipped basket of apples. It pawed at a particularly shiny red apple, sending it rolling across the cobblestones. The mother's head snapped toward the movement, ears twitching, but she did not intervene harshly. Instead, she allowed the cub to explore, maintaining a watchful eye while signaling reassurance with a subtle nudge of her snout. The humans watched in silent admiration. Every gesture from this mother bear was teaching, guiding, and gently disciplining her cubs simultaneously. The festival's atmosphere began to shift. What had started as panic and fear slowly transformed into curiosity and fascination. Camera shutters clicked in a near-rhythmic pattern as photographers documented the scene, careful to maintain a safe distance. A few brave children, encouraged by their parents, extended small hands with slices of bread or pieces of apple. The cubs sniffed cautiously, retreating when their mother tensed, but gradually they inched closer, learning from her calm composure that humans posed no immediate danger. Amid the unfolding spectacle, a volunteer appeared, balancing a tray of fresh cider. "Maybe if we offer them something familiar, they'll calm down further," she whispered. The mother bear's nose twitched at the sweet, familiar scent. She glanced at her cubs, who were now investigating the scattered apples more confidently. Slowly, she stepped toward the tray, sniffing it with deliberate caution. One cub followed, pawing gently at a spilled drop of cider. A ripple of collective relief spread through the crowd. Humans smiled cautiously, heartbeats beginning to normalize after the tense moments earlier. The festival's energy shifted further when a small girl, no more than 7 or 8, stepped out of the crowd, holding a tiny basket of apple slices. She extended it toward the mother bear, who stopped and stared at her with a gaze that seemed almost sentient. For a brief moment, the festival fell silent, every eye fixed on the interaction. Slowly, the mother lowered her massive head and sniffed the basket. Her paw gently nudged one cub forward, signaling it to partake in this new gesture of trust. The cub hesitated, then nibbled at the apple slice, tasting the sweetness with cautious curiosity. Encouraged, the mother bear began to explore more confidently, sniffing along the stalls, nudging fallen apples toward her cubs. The humans remained respectful, moving only when necessary to allow her safe passage. A collective understanding seemed to take root. The bears were temporary festival guests, curious and intelligent, not hostile invaders. Children laughed quietly as the cubs tumbled over each other, chasing a rolling apple, their playful antics bridging the gap between fear and fascination. But just as the crowd began to exhale in relief, a loud clatter erupted from a nearby stall. A cart overloaded with cider barrels had tipped over, sending a cascade of wooden containers tumbling toward the mother bear. She snapped her head toward the noise, growling sharply to alert her cubs. The playful cubs froze, ears pinned back, and the humans instinctively stepped back, unsure whether to intervene. The mother bear's body tensed, muscles coiling as she assessed the danger. She darted forward with remarkable speed, her paws skidding slightly on the cobblestones, nudging her cubs out of harm's way. The crowd gasped collectively. For a heartbeat, it seemed as if the festival might descend into chaos. But the mother bear's agility and attentiveness shone through. She guided her cubs around the falling barrels, gently but firmly directing them toward an open patch of grass between stalls. The humans watched, transfixed by the precision and intelligence of her movements. Some whispered softly, marveling at the maternal instinct that had saved her cubs from harm. For a moment, the festival felt suspended in time. The mother bear stood tall, eyes scanning the humans, nostrils flaring, assessing. The cubs huddled behind her, panting slightly from excitement and relief. Then, slowly, she turned her gaze back toward the cider barrels, sniffing cautiously. Her presence was commanding, yet composed, a paradoxical mixture of strength and gentleness that held everyone in silent awe. Just as the tension began to dissipate, a sudden scream pierced the air. One of the cubs had wandered too close to the edge of a small pond near the festival grounds, slipping dangerously toward the water. The mother bear froze, her body rigid with alarm. Would she reach the cub in time? Or would the playful exploration take a terrifying turn? Every human, child, and volunteer held their breath, watching the mother spring into action. The mother bear's eyes sharpened, nostrils flaring as she gauged the distance between her cub and the water's edge. Time slowed in her mind, the world narrowed to the 3 lives she was sworn to protect. One paw lifted, claws barely touching the cobblestones, ready to propel her forward. The cub teetered dangerously, its tiny legs slipping on the wet grass, ears flattened in confusion and fear. The humans froze, unsure whether to intervene or let nature take its course, their collective silence amplifying the tension. A festival volunteer, sensing imminent danger, stepped forward instinctively, reaching toward the cub. But the mother bear's low, guttural growl stopped her mid-step. The sound reverberated through the crisp autumn air, commanding attention without aggression. The humans instinctively recoiled, stepping back, realizing that any rash movement could trigger panic. The mother bear's stance was firm yet fluid, muscles rippling under her thick fur as she calculated her approach. With a sudden surge of strength, she darted forward, her paws skidding slightly on the wet grass, claws extended for grip. One cub scrambled behind her, following instinctively, while the adventurous one teetered on the brink. Time stretched, a heartbeat that felt like an eternity, as she lunged, sweeping the cub into her massive forelegs with precision and care. The tiny body pressed against hers, warm and trembling, as she carried it back toward the relative safety of the cider barrels. The crowd exhaled collectively, some cheering quietly, others whispering in awe. Children clutched their parents' sleeves, eyes wide with wonder. The mother bear lowered her cubs gently, nudging them to settle among the scattered apples, ensuring both were unharmed. Her head tilted slightly, sniffing the air, and nostrils flared as she scanned for further dangers. The spilled cider had attracted ants, and a curious raccoon appeared from behind a barrel, sniffing cautiously. The mother growled softly, a sound of territorial caution, and the raccoon scurried away, disappearing into the autumn foliage. The cubs, emboldened by their mother's protective action, began to explore again, sniffing at the fallen apples and cider droplets. The adventurous one even pawed at a small pumpkin, sending it rolling toward a group of human children who laughed softly at the playful display. The mother bear's eyes followed every movement, a delicate balance of trust and vigilance. She allowed the cubs freedom, but every twitch of their ears, every stumble, was met with a subtle correction, a paw nudging a cub back on track, a low rumble reinforcing caution. Festival goers began to regain a sense of awe rather than fear. The humans who had moments ago cowered in uncertainty now observed with admiration, witnessing maternal instinct in its raw, unfiltered form. A local baker, whose stall had narrowly escaped being toppled by the earlier cider barrels, cautiously approached with a small bag of fresh bread. "Perhaps a little treat for our guests," he muttered, keeping his voice calm and measured. The mother bear's ears flicked toward him. Slowly she stepped closer, sniffing the air delicately, assessing whether this gesture signified goodwill. One of the cubs ventured forward, taking the bread with tentative paws, nibbling carefully. The mother watched, approvingly rumbling, then eased closer herself, sniffing the baked goods. The humans maintained their respectful distance, careful to respect her space. Children pointed quietly, whispering to one another, enchanted by the blend of fear, respect, and fascination that radiated from this family of bears. Even the dogs, now at a safe distance, watched attentively, tails low, sensing that they were observers to something extraordinary. But just as relief began to settle over the festival grounds, a loud crash echoed from the far edge of the cider stalls. A row of decorative barrels, stacked for display, teetered dangerously under the weight of gravity and clumsy festival-goers brushing past. The mother bear's ears flattened, nostrils flaring again as her body tensed. The cubs froze, their small bodies pressed close against her legs. The humans gasped, parents instinctively pulled children back. A few photographers instinctively raised cameras, capturing the tension as if suspended in time. The mother bear's head shot toward the disturbance. Her body coiled like a spring, claws digging into the cobblestones ready to respond. But she did not rush blindly. Instead, she assessed, calculated, and then moved, paws sliding as she intercepted the teetering barrels with a precise push. One barrel wobbled dangerously, threatening to crush a pumpkin nearby, but her swift nudge sent it safely aside. The crowd exhaled in unison, relief washing over them. The cubs, encouraged by her intervention, chirped softly in excitement, tails twitching in delight. Yet the reprieve was short-lived. From the other side of the festival, a sudden shout rose. A group of teenagers chasing each other recklessly had startled the more timid cub. It bolted instinctively toward the crowded food stalls, slipping and stumbling in its panic. The mother bear growled sharply, pivoting her massive body, claws scraping against the cobblestones, and lunged with astonishing agility. She intercepted the cub just in time, pressing it gently against her chest, allowing the small one to calm and breathe once more. The humans held their breath. Every movement of the mother bear was a study in precision, patience, and instinctive protection. No sudden aggression, no recklessness, only calculated, maternal response. She pressed the cub to her side, nudging the adventurous one to settle among the apples. The festival seemed to pause, every human witness captivated by the natural choreography unfolding before them. Then, in a moment of unexpected calm, the mother bear lowered her head, sniffing toward the humans. A collective silence followed, broken only by the soft scuffle of paws on cobblestones. She was watching them, studying them, but not with aggression. Her eyes, dark and intelligent, seemed almost to question, "Can we coexist? Will you respect my family?" Before the tension could dissolve completely, a piercing scream erupted from the far edge of the festival. One of the cubs had wandered too close to the cider pond again, and the water's edge was treacherously slick. The mother bear froze, eyes widening in alarm. Could she reach the cub in time, or would the slippery surface turn playful curiosity into peril? Humans and children held their breath, the crowd collectively frozen in anticipation as she pivoted, muscles coiling, preparing for a decisive leap. What would you do if you were standing at a festival and saw a bear saving her cubs from danger? Would you help, stay back, or try to film it? The mother bear's muscles coiled, eyes locked on the slippery edge of the cider pond. Her paws dug into the damp earth, claws gripping with precision. The adventurous cub, oblivious to the danger, pawed at a fallen leaf drifting across the water's surface, its tiny body trembling with excitement and imbalance. The mother's low growl rolled like distant thunder, a warning, a reminder of danger, and a call to return. The cub paused, ears flicking nervously, sensing the urgency in her tone but still caught in playful curiosity. Humans froze along the pond's edge. Festival-goers who had moments ago laughed and cheered now held their breath. Parents clutched children while photographers lowered cameras, realizing that capturing the moment was far less important than witnessing the outcome. Even the local dogs, previously curious, lay low, tails between legs, sensing that nature's rules were overriding any human notion of entertainment. The mother bear stepped forward, slow but purposeful. Each paw pressed lightly against the wet grass, careful not to slip herself. The adventurous cub teetered again, small claws scraping the mud as it leaned dangerously forward. Panic tightened the mother's chest, but she did not rush recklessly. Instead, she moved like a shadow of controlled force, her massive body perfectly balanced between power and precision. One step, then another, her head low and eyes never leaving the cub. A festival volunteer, emboldened by the apparent calm, whispered softly to a nearby parent, "Maybe we should try to help?" The mother bear's ears twitched sharply at the sound, her body freezing. She fixed her gaze on the humans, not in aggression but in silent communication. "This is my cub. Your hands are not needed." The humans nodded subtly, stepping back, instinctively understanding that the true guardianship belonged to her. Respect hung thick in the air, mingling with the scent of cider, apples and autumn leaves. The cub slipped again, front paws skidding on wet mud. The mother lunged. Her massive forelegs extended, claws carefully aimed, not to harm but to guide. She caught the cub beneath her chest just before it tumbled into the pond. The tiny body pressed against her warmth, heart pounding, lungs heaving yet safe for now. She lowered it gently to the grass, nudging it to stay closer, while her other paw swept away fallen leaves that threatened to lure the cub back toward danger. Humans exhaled audibly, some whispering prayers of relief. The mother bear's head tilted toward them briefly, nostrils flaring, eyes intelligent and calculating. She wasn't threatening, she was assessing. A bond of mutual understanding began to form, a silent agreement that humans could exist here as observers, but only on her terms. The cubs, sensing the safety of their mother's presence, began to explore again, cautiously this time. One pawed gently at a cider puddle, sending ripples that reflected the golden autumn sunlight. Festival-goers regained a cautious sense of wonder. Children pointed excitedly but whispered, unsure if their voices would disturb the bear family. The mother bear pressed close to the adventurous cub, while the other, more cautious cub nestled against her side. She sniffed the cider-stained ground, eyes tracking the movement of nearby barrels, fallen pumpkins and scattered apples. Every detail was noted, every potential hazard assessed. Her protective instincts were flawless, a choreography born of survival, softened by maternal love. The humans, emboldened by her non-aggression, began to offer space rather than treats. The local baker placed a small pile of bread near the edge of the festival, far enough to avoid intrusion but close enough for the cubs to notice. The mother sniffed, assessed, then allowed the cubs to approach cautiously. One nibble, then another, and soon both were quietly enjoying the unexpected snack, tails flicking in contentment. The crowd watched, captivated by this delicate balance of trust and caution, realizing that life and survival were unfolding before them, far beyond the reach of cameras or social media. Suddenly, a loud cheer erupted from the other side of the festival. The cider tasting contest had begun. Music blared, humans clapped, and laughter bounced across the stalls. The mother bear's ears twitched, alert. She wasn't threatened, but her instincts sharpened. The cubs sensed it too, pressing closer. One human, sensing the tension, held a hand up, signaling calm to the others. The bear watched, sniffed, then relaxed slightly, allowing the cubs to continue exploring. But the relief was fleeting. From the far corner of the festival, a loose dog, chased by excited children, barreled toward the mother bear. The cubs froze, unsure whether to flee or trust her guidance. The mother growled, low and powerful, a sound that rolled like a warning through the crisp autumn air. The dog skidded to a halt, whimpering, recognizing the dominance of the bear. Humans ran to corral the dog, guiding it safely away without startling the bear family. The mother bear's eyes followed, ensuring her cubs remained untouched, her body coiled in readiness for any further disruptions. The festival seemed to hold its collective breath. Autumn sunlight painted golden streaks across cider barrels, pumpkin displays and scattered apples. Leaves rustled gently in the breeze, creating a natural soundtrack for this extraordinary moment. The cubs, emboldened once more, began pawing at fallen leaves and cider droplets, their small bodies radiating a blend of curiosity and trust. The mother bear remained ever vigilant, a sentinel of instinct and maternal love, scanning for hazards, adjusting her position with fluid precision. Then a sudden scream pierced the festive ambience. A child had dropped a basket of apples near the water's edge. The sound, loud and sharp, startled one of the cubs. It bolted instinctively toward the slippery cider pond, ears flat against its head. The mother bear's eyes widened. Time seemed to stretch. Every heart, human and animal, synced in anticipation. The mother bear lunged, muscles coiling like springs, paws skimming the wet grass, claws extended for perfect grip. Would she reach the cub in time, or would the slick cider and sudden panic turn playful curiosity into catastrophe? Humans watched frozen, breaths caught, cameras lowered, hearts pounding. The scene held suspended in the tension of the moment, a heartbeat away from either triumph or disaster. Time slowed as the mother bear lunged, powerful limbs slicing through the crisp autumn air. The cub's tiny paws skidded across the cider-slicked ground, claws barely finding purchase. The humans held their breath, frozen in awe and fear, as the scene seemed to suspend mid-motion. Every eye followed the mother, muscles taut, body coiled with precision. She extended her massive paw just as the cub slipped closer to the water's edge. A gasp rippled through the crowd as the claws grazed the cub's back, not in harm but a gentle nudge toward safety. The cub yelped in startled delight and scrambled onto firmer ground, shivering from adrenaline and cider-slick leaves. The mother's low growl softened into a reassuring rumble, vibrating across the festival grounds, a sound that spoke only to the cub. "You are safe now." The humans exhaled collectively, some whispering prayers of relief. Children clutched stuffed animals and parents, hearts pounding, marveling at the precision and care of the bear's movement. One baker, still holding a basket of fallen apples, muttered under his breath, "I never thought I'd witness anything like this at my own festival." His words floated through the crisp air, a tiny acknowledgement of the extraordinary scene unfolding. The cub, emboldened by its mother's protective presence, began exploring the cider-soaked festival again, though more cautiously. Each paw step was calculated, sniffing fallen apples, nudging small barrels and pawing at leaves swirling in the wind. The mother bear remained a step behind, muscles coiled but relaxed, eyes scanning for any potential threats. Every rustle of leaves, every sudden movement of humans, every whistle of the autumn wind kept her alert. The humans, emboldened by the calm, slowly shifted closer, not to touch but to observe, to participate in a shared respect for life. One volunteer approached, holding a small basket of bread and unsweetened apple slices. She placed it carefully at the edge of the mother's territory, stepping back immediately. The mother sniffed the offering, glanced at her cub, and then allowed the tiny bears to approach. They nibbled cautiously, tails flicking, eyes wide, hearts racing, yet the trust forming was palpable. From a distance, the festival music resumed, but with a softer tempo, as if the organizers had instinctively adapted to the presence of their most unexpected guests. Children sat cross-legged on hay bales, whispering and pointing, captivated by the delicate choreography of maternal care and festival chaos. Parents lowered phones and cameras, understanding that witnessing the moment was more important than recording it. The mother bear's eyes flicked toward them once, alert, calculating but not threatening. She had established the rules: observe, respect, and leave the cubs untouched. Then a new disturbance arose. A group of festival-goers, unaware of the bear's precise boundaries, approached too closely, laughing and snapping photos. The mother's ears twitched sharply. Her low growl returned, rolling like distant thunder, a sound that silenced laughter instantly. Humans froze, instinctively stepping back. The bear's gaze swept across them, calculating, asserting dominance without aggression. The cubs, sensing her warning, pressed close, small bodies flattening against the ground. One brave child, no more than 7, dropped a small pumpkin nearby. The cub's eyes lit up immediately. It bounded toward the pumpkin, but the mother bear's paw intercepted it mid-leap, nudging it gently toward the child instead. The child froze, awestruck, as the cub sniffed the pumpkin, then pawed at it, finally nudging it back toward the child. The mother watched, eyes softening, chest rumbling, acknowledging the small human gesture without compromising her cub's safety. Festival-goers began to murmur, slowly realizing that this was not a typical wildlife encounter. The bears were not just surviving, they were communicating, negotiating, testing boundaries, and forming a tentative truce with humans. The mother bear, having established her dominance and the safety of her cubs, allowed them a rare moment of playful exploration. The cubs, sensing the absence of immediate danger, tumbled over cider-soaked leaves, pawed at spilled apples, and nudged each other gently, their tiny bodies radiating curiosity and joy. But serenity was short-lived. From the far end of the festival, a crate of apples tipped over, sending a rolling cascade toward the pond's edge. One adventurous cub bolted toward the tumbling fruit, claws scraping across cider-slick mud, body slipping dangerously close to the water. The mother growled sharply, a deep rumble that vibrated through the festival grounds. Humans froze again, some instinctively stepping in, yet the mother's gaze cut across them like a blade, signaling, "This is my domain. Step back." With remarkable precision, the mother intercepted her cub just inches from the water, nudging it to safety with a careful swipe of her massive paw. The cub yelped, then scrambled back toward its sibling and mother, small body trembling from the adrenaline rush. Festival goers erupted into whispers of admiration, realizing the sheer skill and protective instinct on display. Cameras lifted briefly, then lowered again, replaced by collective awe. The mother bear finally settled, chest rising and falling in slow, controlled rhythm. The cubs nestled close, sniffing each other, curling into soft piles of fur. The humans held their distance, some lowering cameras completely, letting the scene unfold organically. The bakery tent still smelled faintly of warm apples and spices, but now it was mixed with the earthy aroma of bears and fallen cider. A harmony had emerged, a delicate balance between festival celebration and the raw beauty of the wild. But as the sun dipped lower, painting long shadows across cider barrels and fallen leaves, a new threat emerged from the edges of the festival. A shadow moved quickly through the trees, a wild fox, curious and bold, darting toward unattended apples and perhaps testing boundaries. The mother bear's ears flicked, head rising slowly. Her body tensed subtly, muscles coiled once more. The cubs stirred, sensing the shift, small paws gripping the ground. Humans held their breath again, instinctively stepping back, understanding that the equilibrium was fragile. The mother bear's eyes narrowed, calculating the approach of the fox. Would she confront the intruder, or allow the cubs to experience a small lesson in vigilance? Festival goers watched frozen, breaths held, as the mother slowly rose, massive frame silhouetted against the fiery autumn sunset, ready to defend her family once more. The tension stretched, every second a heartbeat away from action. The mother bear's posture was rigid, muscles taut, eyes locked on the fox weaving cautiously between cider barrels. Her low growl vibrated across the festival, deep and resonant, a warning that silenced even the whispers of nearby humans. The cubs pressed closer, instinctively flattening against her legs. Each paw step of the fox across cider-slick ground was met with a subtle shift of the mother's weight, every movement precise, measured, a display of dominance without immediate aggression. Humans scattered slightly, forming a loose semicircle, their collective caution palpable. Festival children pressed closer to their parents, eyes wide, mouths agape. Some pointed silently at the bears, unsure whether to cheer, gasp, or simply remain motionless. The mother bear didn't glance at them. Her world had narrowed to the fox, the safety of her cubs, and the delicate balance between defending her family and avoiding unnecessary confrontation. The fox paused, ears pricked, nose twitching, clearly aware of the mother's presence. It was a bold creature, attracted not just by the spilled apples but perhaps by the scent of adventure or mischief. The cub's curiosity bubbled over. One let out a small, high-pitched yelp and padded toward the fox, tiny claws skimming the cider-soaked leaves. The mother growled sharply, a vibration that seemed to reverberate into the earth itself. The cub froze mid-step, eyes wide, immediately retreating to the safety of her mother's shadow. A volunteer from the festival cautiously stepped forward, holding a basket of fresh apples. She placed it gently a few feet away from the fox, hoping to divert its attention. The fox sniffed the offering, eyes flicking toward the bear, ears twitching. With one last glance at the mother, it darted toward the apples, pausing briefly as if acknowledging the unspoken rules set by the bear's imposing figure. The mother relaxed slightly but didn't take her eyes off the fox, ready to spring if necessary. The cubs began to explore again, gingerly stepping over cider-stained leaves, nudging small pumpkins and sniffing fallen apples. Their tiny bodies radiated curiosity and excitement, tempered by caution learned from watching their mother. One cub pawed at a half-squashed barrel, sending a small cascade of cider rolling toward the ground. The mother's rumble was gentle this time, more of an acknowledgement than a warning, a subtle lesson in balance between curiosity and caution. Humans watched in stunned silence, some whispering to each other about the astonishing maternal instincts on display. A few older children, emboldened, sat cross-legged on hay bales, their hands folded carefully, allowing the cubs to explore safely. The festival had transformed from a bustling celebration into a shared wildlife sanctuary, the delicate dance between humans and animals creating a moment none would forget. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew through the apple trees lining the festival grounds, rattling leaves and sending cider-slick debris skittering across the earth. The cubs froze, ears twitching, tiny bodies quivering with anticipation. The mother growled again, low and controlled, signaling vigilance without panic. Humans instinctively moved back, forming a protective buffer, understanding that the bear's behavior was not unpredictable but precise, a communication that transcended language. Then, from the far side of the festival, a crate tipped, spilling a small avalanche of apples. The cubs, excited and unaware of potential danger, bolted toward the tumbling fruit. The mother acted instantly, intercepting them with a powerful swipe of her paw, nudging them away from potential harm. The crowd collectively exhaled, marveling at the precision of her actions, a display of instinct refined by experience. One human, a young baker who had witnessed much of the chaos, stepped forward cautiously, holding a warm loaf of bread. He placed it near the edge of the cub's territory, ensuring he stayed low and non-threatening. The mother sniffed the offering, glanced at her cubs, and then allowed the tiny bears to approach. They nibbled cautiously, tails flicking, eyes wide with cautious delight. Humans whispered, some clapping softly, creating a symphony of restrained celebration, acknowledging the shared space without encroachment. But serenity was short-lived. From the distant treeline, a new sound emerged, a low growl followed by the rustle of leaves. Another bear, larger and older, was approaching, curious and perhaps territorial. The mother's ears flattened, eyes narrowing, muscles coiling like springs. The cubs huddled, instinctively flattening against her chest. The festival humans froze, realizing another layer of tension had entered the scene. The newcomer bear paused at the edge of the clearing, sniffing the air, eyes scanning the cider-soaked festival grounds. The mother bear shifted slightly, positioning herself between the cubs and the stranger. Low growls echoed, vibrating across the autumn air, a negotiation of dominance and territory unfolding without violence, yet charged with unspoken threat. The cubs, sensing the tension, whimpered softly, small voices piercing the air, drawing human attention once more. A volunteer whispered to the crowd, "Give them space. Let the mother handle this." The humans obeyed, forming a respectful perimeter, allowing the natural drama to unfold. The two adult bears circled each other, slow, deliberate movements, sniffing, growling, muscles coiled for defense yet holding back. The mother's eyes flicked to her cubs, ensuring their safety while maintaining focus on the approaching bear. The cubs, sensing their mother's resolve, began to relax slightly, small tails flicking, tiny paws shifting in cautious exploration. The crowd's collective tension heightened as the bears circled, a raw display of instincts honed by survival. Autumn leaves swirled in the wind, cider-slick ground reflecting the amber glow of the setting sun. Every movement mattered, every growl carried weight. Humans whispered, cameras lowered, realizing this moment was fragile, unique, and utterly unrepeatable. The newcomer bear made a sudden move, a swipe through the fallen leaves, claws scraping dangerously close to a cider barrel. The mother bear tensed, ready to defend her cubs, every muscle primed for instant action. The cubs whimpered softly, pressed to her legs, eyes wide. Humans held their breath as the balance of power, maternal instinct, and festival harmony teetered on the edge of chaos. If you were at the festival, would you trust the mother bear to handle an approaching stranger bear, or try to intervene? How far would you let nature take its course? The air was thick with the scent of apples, earth, and the raw musk of two adult bears sizing each other up. Leaves rustled, cider puddles glimmered under the waning sunlight, and the crowd of humans maintained a respectful distance, their whispers a fragile backdrop to the intensity unfolding in front of them. The mother bear's eyes never left the newcomer, muscles rippling under her fur, tail stiff, claws gripping the soft earth. Her cubs pressed closer, tiny bodies trembling but trusting, sensing that their mother was a force not to be underestimated. The newcomer bear let out a deep, rumbling growl, stepping deliberately closer, nostrils flaring as he sniffed the air saturated with the aroma of cider, fallen apples, and human presence. His eyes flicked to the cubs, lingering for a heartbeat before returning to the mother. The mother bear's stance remained unwavering, her low growl vibrating like distant thunder across the festival grounds. Each breath they took seemed synchronized with the subtle shift of tension in the crowd. The humans instinctively stepped back, understanding that even the slightest movement could trigger a violent escalation. The cubs, sensing the intensity, shuffled nervously, ears flattening against their heads. One small paw accidentally nudged a fallen cider barrel, the soft thud sounding unnaturally loud in the tense silence. The mother bear's eyes flicked to her cub, nostrils flaring, a gentle growl of reassurance rather than anger. The cub pressed closer, tiny body trembling but trusting. Suddenly, the newcomer bear lunged, not with aggression, but a swift investigative swipe, claws scraping the cider-streaked ground inches from the mother bear. Her muscles coiled like springs, a precise shift forward, signaling readiness to defend without unnecessary violence. Humans gasped softly, some instinctively moving a step back. The cubs whimpered softly, pressed against their mother's legs. It was a dance of instinct, power, and strategy, a delicate negotiation between two forces that could have erupted into chaos in an instant. The mother bear slowly circled the newcomer, keeping her cubs between them. Each step was measured, deliberate, a subtle message that aggression would meet resistance. The newcomer mirrored her movements, eyes sharp, muscles tensed, sniffing for a sign of weakness. Autumn leaves swirled underfoot, cider puddles glimmered, and the human's breath seemed to hang suspended in the crisp evening air. Then a sudden distraction. A young festival-goer tripped over a hay bale, crying out sharply. The sound pierced the tense air. Both bears' heads snapped toward the source, nostrils flaring, instincts on high alert. The cubs shrank closer to their mother, tiny bodies trembling. The mother growled sharply, a controlled rumble that warned the newcomer to hold back, yet allowed the human to retreat safely behind the crowd. The balance had shifted momentarily, tension diffused just enough for a heartbeat. Taking advantage of the brief pause, the mother nudged her cubs toward a safer patch of cider-soaked ground, her movements fluid and precise. The cubs responded, tiny bodies moving with cautious agility, their trust in their mother absolute. The newcomer bear paused, nostrils quivering, eyes flicking to the cubs, then back to the mother. It was clear he wasn't here to attack, but curiosity and territorial instinct were intertwined, a delicate line that could snap at any moment. A volunteer quietly placed another basket of apples near the edge of the festival, hoping to redirect the newcomer's attention. The bear sniffed, cautiously, taking a slow step toward the offering. The mother's eyes followed, tail flicking, posture alert, ready to defend but maintaining a measured restraint. The cubs watched, curious but cautious, learning lessons in instinct, caution, and trust that no human could teach. Just as a moment of tentative calm seemed possible, a sudden commotion erupted near the cider barrels. One cub, driven by curiosity, had pawed at a loose lid, sending a small cascade of apples rolling across the sticky ground. The mother reacted instantly, her paw sweeping the cub gently but firmly back towards safety. The humans held their breath, realizing every move the cub made could escalate the tension. From the tree-line, distant rustling hinted at additional wildlife drawn to the festival. The faint rumble of hooves, perhaps a deer or another fox. The mother growled low and deep, a sound that resonated like an unspoken command, "Stay together. Stay safe." Her cubs flattened against her legs, eyes wide, trusting implicitly. The newcomer bear, sensing no immediate threat, watched, nostrils flaring, muscles relaxed slightly but still coiled for sudden action. As darkness crept across the festival grounds, lanterns flickered to life, casting long shadows across cider-soaked earth. The human crowd shifted subtly, maintaining a cautious semicircle, aware that the bear's world and their own were delicately intertwined. The mother bear adjusted her stance, protecting her cubs while assessing the newcomer's intentions. The cubs explored again cautiously, tiny paws leaving faint prints in cider-slick ground, a mix of curiosity and instinctual caution guiding each movement. Suddenly, a loud clap of thunder echoed from distant clouds, startling both bears. The cubs yelped, pressing closer to their mother, tiny bodies trembling. The mother growled, positioning herself between cubs and newcomer. The newcomer flinched, ears flicking back, then stepped back slightly, recognizing the authority and precision of the mother's response. Humans murmured softly, captivated by the intricate dynamics on display, a lesson in trust, survival, and instinctual communication across species. Just as a fragile calm settled, a shadow moved along the far edge of the festival. A larger, older bear, massive and imposing, silhouetted against the fading light. The mother's ears flattened, muscles tensed, cubs pressed tighter. The newcomer bear turned to face the new presence, nostrils flaring, growl deepening. Humans instinctively shifted back, realizing the scene was about to escalate beyond anything witnessed so far. The cubs whimpered, pressing against their mother, eyes wide, tiny hearts racing. The new bear stepped into the light, towering over cider barrels, its eyes locking onto the mother and her cubs. A growl rumbled through the festival, low and resonant, vibrating the very ground beneath the humans' feet. The mother bear growled back, stance unwavering, claws digging into the earth. The cubs trembled between them, fragile lives hanging in the balance as the air thickened with tension. One misstep, one miscalculated move, and the delicate harmony could shatter instantly. The humans froze, breath caught, as the three bears locked in an unspoken standoff that would determine the safety of the cubs, and the outcome of the entire festival. The autumn night deepened, lanterns flickering and casting long shadows across cider-stained earth. The distant murmur of festival-goers had softened to cautious whispers, each human frozen in awe and apprehension at the intricate dance of survival and instinct playing out before them. The mother bear's stance remained firm, cubs pressed close, their small bodies trembling but resilient. The newcomer bear shifted, muscles coiled yet restrained, eyes never leaving the cubs. The third bear at the edge of the festival had not moved closer, yet its massive presence radiated an unspoken authority, a silent warning that even curiosity and courage had limits. The mother bear let out a low, controlled growl, a sound that reverberated through the crisp night air, warning not only the newcomer but also the distant third bear that the cubs were off-limits. The cubs huddled closer, their tiny forms nearly invisible beneath the protective shadow of their mother. Each heartbeat, each breath, was amplified in the tense silence, a testament to how fragile and precious life could be. Suddenly the newcomer bear stepped closer, slow, deliberate, sniffing the air thick with cider, fallen apples, and the subtle musk of the festival itself. There was no aggression, only curiosity and a quiet acknowledgement of the mother's authority. He lowered his massive head slightly, letting out a gentle rumble, not a growl, not a threat, but a sound that suggested recognition of the delicate balance in front of him. The mother's eyes narrowed, still cautious, but her stance softened fractionally, signaling that the moment was not one of conflict but of cautious truce. The third bear, still at the periphery, shifted slightly, then turned away, lumbering back into the shadowed treeline. The tension that had gripped the festival dissipated like morning mist under sunlight. The humans exhaled collectively, the whispered gasps of relief blending with the rustling leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. Lanterns flickered as festival volunteers cautiously stepped closer, ensuring that no sudden movement would disrupt the fragile peace. The mother bear nudged her cubs gently, encouraging them to explore the ground near the cider barrels, sniffing fallen apples with tentative curiosity. One cub pawed at a small puddle of cider, then looked up at its mother, eyes wide and gleaming with trust. The mother growled softly, a sound of reassurance, guiding her cubs with gentle authority rather than aggression. The newcomer bear watched silently, eyes following each movement with measured attention, learning, observing, acknowledging the mother's role as protector. Humans, inspired and cautious, began to quietly step back, letting the bear's space remain undisturbed. Some raised cameras tentatively, capturing fleeting glimpses of maternal instinct, survival, and interspecies understanding, but always from a distance, understanding that this was not a spectacle for entertainment, it was a profound lesson in respect, trust, and coexistence. Night deepened further. The festival grounds, once bustling with noise, were now quiet save for the soft murmurs of the wind, the gentle rustle of fallen leaves, and the occasional shuffle of bare paws. The mother bear lay down, curling around her cubs protectively, breathing deep and slow, muscles relaxing but remaining poised, alert. The cubs nestled against her, their tiny chests rising and falling in rhythm with her steady heartbeat. The newcomer bear settled a few paces away, sitting on his haunches, ears flicking at every sound, yet maintaining a distance that respected the cubs' space. A soft moonlight bathed the scene, illuminating cider puddles, fallen apples, and the gentle curve of the mother bear's back. The air smelled faintly of fermenting fruit, earth, and the wild musk of survival. It was a quiet, almost sacred moment, a pause in the rhythm of life where predator and prey, stranger and family, coexistence and instinct all converged. The humans remained silent, understanding that any sudden noise or movement could disrupt the fragile equilibrium. Hours passed. The cubs eventually dozed against their mother, small bodies twitching in shallow, fragile sleep. The mother's eyes remained partially open, a careful guardian. The newcomer bear shifted, moving slightly closer, as if sensing the vulnerability of the sleeping cubs but maintaining a respectful distance. There was no tension now, only cautious observation, a silent understanding that while the world could be unpredictable and dangerous, trust and restraint could form bridges between even the most unlikely of allies. The first light of dawn began to spill across the festival grounds, painting cider-stained earth, fallen leaves, and lanterns in soft gold and amber. Birds began to stir, their songs tentative but growing in confidence. Humans, witnessing the dawn and the bears' cautious coexistence, began to whisper in wonder, their voices low, respectful, aware that they had witnessed a story that transcended simple survival. The mother bear slowly rose, nudging her cubs gently. The small ones attempted to stand, legs wobbling, but determination and trust guided each movement. The newcomer bear watched, head tilted, observing, learning perhaps the subtleties of familial protection that transcended species. The mother bear nudged one cub toward a patch of apples, encouraging exploration, nourishment, and independence. The cubs pawed at the fruit, small playful sounds escaping their mouths, a fragile but undeniable symbol of resilience. Humans took cautious steps backward, giving the bears full space while capturing the moment in whispered admiration and quiet photographs. The festival's earlier chaos now seemed distant, replaced by a quiet, meaningful scene of life continuing, bonds forming, and instincts guiding interactions in a world where humans and wildlife had intersected without destruction. Finally, the mother bear, cubs safely near her, gave a low rumble, a sound of acknowledgement, trust, and reassurance. The newcomer bear responded with a soft rumble of his own, a gesture that suggested recognition of the mother's authority, the cub's safety, and the unspoken rules that had emerged in the midst of chaos. Humans witnessed this exchange with awe, understanding that this moment was more than survival. It was empathy, recognition, and the fragile, profound power of coexistence. The cubs played gently under their mother's watchful eye, while the newcomer bear slowly retreated, returning to the edge of the festival grounds. The humans exhaled, some with tears, some with quiet smiles, knowing they had witnessed a story of courage, trust, and the unexpected intersections of life. As the sun rose higher, casting long shadows across cider barrels and fallen apples, the festival began to stir again. Humans cautiously resumed their activities, but the memory of the bears, the mother, her cubs, and the respectful newcomer, remained vivid, a lesson in the strength of life, the bonds that form even in the wild, and the quiet power of understanding across boundaries. In the distance, the mother bear lifted her cubs gently by nudging them toward a safer area, ensuring they were protected as they explored the edges of the festival. The cubs' tiny forms, resilient and trusting, reflected the culmination of a night filled with tension, instinct, and careful negotiation. The newcomer bear watched one last time, ears flicking, before turning back into the shadowed forest, leaving the mother and her cubs to their world, alive, safe, and stronger for the trials of the night. While the immediate danger had passed, the festival and the bears' worlds had intersected in ways no one could predict. Trust had been tested, instincts sharpened, and bonds formed across boundaries. The humans returned home, carrying with them stories of courage, restraint, and wonder. But in the forest beyond the cider-stained ground, the bears carried a story that would ripple through their lives forever. That survival is not only about strength, but about understanding, compassion, and respect.